Miracle on the Hudson River. A jetliner crash lands in the frigid waters just off New York City, and it remains intact and afloat long enough for all its passengers and crew to be rescued.
Left engine just blew. Fire, flames coming out of it, and I was looking right at it because I was sitting right there.
I just saw the big splash when the plane just bounced over the water, like they landed it on the water.
Welcome. Try to imagine the terror. The passengers on a US Airways jet taking off from New York's LaGuardia Airport this afternoon on a short flight to North Carolina first heard a loud bang. Apparently the sound of birds striking and knocking out the plane's two engines. It was suddenly aloft in a huge and heavy unpowered glider. A pilot warned them to prepare for impact, and they must have feared the very worst at that stage. But it appears tonight that all of the more than 150 passengers and crew on that plane are safe after the pilots executed a miraculous crash landing in the freezing Hudson River. The BBC's Richard Lister begins our coverage tonight of the day's dramatic events.
Just minutes after takeoff, US Airways Flight 1549 was floating in the icy waters of the Hudson River, its tail like a giant shark's fin marking the spot where it came down. Within minutes, passenger ferries and vessels with the Coast Guard and emergency services converged on the scene. The plane appeared to be largely intact and drifting slowly downriver. Soon after the crash, passengers, some in bright yellow life jackets, could be seen standing on the wings waiting to be rescued, the river water lapping around their ankles. The plane, an A320 Airbus, had taken off from LaGuardia Airport en route to Charlotte, North Carolina, when the pilot reported he'd struck a flock of birds, disabling at least one engine. He was forced to turn back. He never made it to the airport, but he was able to bring the plane down safely in the river, and remarkably, everyone survived.
I just saw the big splash when the plane just bounced over the water, like they landed it on the water.
It is scary. You don't see, ever since 9/11, you don't see things coming that close.
New York has dealt with disaster before, of course, and the rescue effort seems to have run smoothly. 155 people were on board the plane. All were taken off safely, cold and shocked, but for the most part unharmed. Business trips and vacations may have been ruined, but everyone here was well aware of just how narrow their escape had been.
So the left engine just blew. Fire, flames coming out of it, and I was looking right at it because I was sitting right there. And it just started smelling a lot like gasoline. And a couple minutes after that, the pilot said, "You guys got to brace for a hard impact." And that's when everyone started, to be honest, saying prayers and looked over the water, and we thought we had a chance because, you know, there was some water. And got to give it to the pilot, man. He made a hell of a landing.
This plane crash in America's biggest city could have been so much worse. As evening fell, the jet was already sinking. US Airways says an investigation is now underway. Richard Lister, BBC News, Washington.
One of those who witnessed today's crash was Robin Roberts, anchor of ABC News Good Morning America. I spoke to her by phone a short time ago. Robin, thanks for joining us. Tell me what you were doing at the time, and more importantly, what did you see?
I was sitting in my apartment, which overlooks the Hudson River, and I was on the phone, and I happened to glance over because it's a beautiful view, and I saw a large jet that was much lower than it should be. And I'm used to seeing planes in that vicinity because it's a flight pattern toward Newark, New Jersey Airport. But then I realized the plane was not gaining altitude, it was losing altitude, so I quickly ran out to my balcony, and again, it overlooks the Hudson River. And I saw the pilot just gently set the plane down. It was almost as he was using the Hudson River as a runway. And the plane set down in the middle of the river. Water came up, of course, everywhere. I immediately called 911 because I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, I need to keep an eye on where the plane is because it's going to sink, and I have to tell them where exactly it went down. But the plane never submerged. It always stayed above water. I grabbed my binoculars that I keep close, and I saw within 30, 45 seconds the front door going open, and it was never underwater. And within a couple of minutes, there is something we call water taxis that are along. It's a very busy riverway with tugboats and other barges and things like that. And within a couple of minutes, there was a water taxi that diverted its route, made its way to the aircraft. Again, it was never sinking, and within, I'd say, 5 minutes, there were 3 and 4 different kind of water taxis that had surrounded it, and people were coming out. They were on the wings. They were very calm. They had on their life vests, so you can tell that they knew that they were going to make a water landing, and that they were well prepared for it.
You must have been pinching yourself while watching all this.
I'm much calmer. I can't believe that I'm telling you this in such a calm account, because I was on the phone and I was screaming. I happened to be talking to my producer, Good Morning America, at the time, and I'm screaming in the phone like, oh my goodness, there's a, you've got, what are we going to, and because it's, and at first people were saying, oh, it's a movie. They're shooting a movie.
Is that what you thought? Did you think it might have been a movie?
Thoughts were, because I immediately, I was on the phone with the office, and they said, well, hold on, they think it may have been a movie shoot. And then I'm thinking, no, I don't think that was, I know movie shoots here in New York City. That didn't seem like a movie shoot, because they should have let us be aware of something like that. And the reason people thought maybe it was because so quickly someone was there on the scene, a water taxi, and just how calm everything was. But yes, to witness something like that, and I'll never forget that image of the plane just crash landing right smack dab in the middle of the Hudson River, right outside my apartment.
Robin Roberts, an astonishing eyewitness account. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
And our own correspondent Greg Wood joins us now live from New York, near where the plane came down this afternoon. Greg, good to speak to you. I mean, I guess New York tonight has a real miracle, but also a genuine hero.
Yes, the pilot of this aeroplane, we understand, used the Hudson River intentionally, as it were, as a runway, having taken off from LaGuardia Airport just to the north of Manhattan, having, it appears, struck a flock of birds, both engines disabled. He tried to return to LaGuardia Airport, obviously wasn't able to make it, and came down deliberately in the Hudson River because, of course, as you know, this is a highly populated area. So if the airplane had crashed anywhere, either on Manhattan or on the New Jersey shore on the other side, then, of course, we would have had a lot of fatalities, a real disaster. And what we do appear to have had here is, well, if not a miracle, at least a very narrow escape. And whether by luck, skill, or the rapid response of the emergency services, this city has had a very narrow escape.
And what news tonight of the survivors, Greg?
Well, as you know, all the passengers on the aeroplane and the crew, 155 people in total, were taken off safely. As you already heard, ferries and river taxis who ply between Manhattan and New Jersey were the first on the scene, even before the emergency services. When I came down here this afternoon, only a few minutes really after the aeroplane had come down, you could see those passengers on the fuselage roof and on the wings waiting to be taken off by ferry, and I followed the aeroplane for more than an hour as it drifted rapidly downstream on the icy current of the Hudson River, getting lower and lower in the water all the time. And then after a while, actually very quickly, no more than probably 30 or 45 minutes, those ferries dispersed, taking the passengers with them. And then the aeroplane itself was guided by now largely submerged by tugs, and it came to a halt down close to Battery Park, which is right down at the southern tip of Manhattan. So it actually drifted several miles on the current during the course of an hour or two.
Everyone seemed incredibly calm in the pictures that we saw. Here's a question for you. Why didn't the plane sink? I mean, if a car lands in the water like that, you'd expect it to go down as quickly as possible. Why did this thing stay afloat for so long?
Well, I'm afraid I don't have the technical or aeronautical expertise to answer that question, Matt. It did, though, become gradually more and more submerged. Obviously, in a situation like that, you have to get the passengers out, you have to open the doors and deploy the emergency chutes. To do that, water is going to come in, presumably at some stage the natural buoyancy of the aeroplane, the materials that it's made of come into play, and you reach a state of equilibrium. And also, within about 20 minutes or half an hour, it was surrounded by tugs. They had attached lines to the aeroplane, which may have helped to keep it even partially above water.
Greg Wood, thank you very much there, next to Pier 83 on the Hudson River.
Officials said the US Airways plane may have hit a flock of birds. Shortly after taking off from LaGuardia Airport, passengers fled to safety onto the wings of the Airbus A320 as it was swept downstream by the icy current. Richard Lister has the latest.
Just minutes after takeoff, US Airways Flight 1549 was floating in the icy waters of the Hudson River, its tail like a giant shark's fin marking the spot where it came down. Within minutes, passenger ferries and vessels with the Coast Guard and emergency services converged on the scene. The plane appeared to be largely intact and drifting slowly downriver. Soon after the crash, passengers, some in bright yellow life jackets, could be seen standing on the wings waiting to be rescued, the river water lapping around their ankles. The plane, an A320 Airbus, had taken off from LaGuardia Airport en route to Charlotte, North Carolina.